I'd like to call this meeting of the Joint Internal Services and Government Oversight Committee to order. And the first activity is the Pledge of Allegiance. Please rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I'd like to have a motion to adopt the agenda.
Romano adopts the agenda.
With the following change.
Okay.
To move the presentation that is 6 down to after item 8.
I'll amend my motion to move that.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Support.
Thank you. Current item 8, after government oversight. Okay, any other discussion? Please vote.
Motion passes 11-0.
Thank you. Item 4, approval of the minutes. The minutes for August 17th of the Joint Internal Services and Government Oversight Committee meeting for approval. Do I have a motion to approve?
Matusik moves.
Thank you. There's a motion and support to approve the minutes. Any discussion? Hearing none, please vote.
Motion passes 11-0.
Thank you. Item 5, public participation. This is the first opportunity for those in the public to participate, to speak for a maximum of 3 minutes on any item that's on today's agenda only. The second opportunity for public participation is for those to speak on any issue. Anybody wishing to speak on items on today's agenda?
Is it on the agenda for him to speak?
It doesn't have to be on the agenda for him to speak, but it would have to be speaking about an item that is on the agenda.
He can speak the second time.
So that'd be the second public participation.
And how long is that?
That's toward the end. That's toward the end of the meeting. Okay, hearing second call for public participation. Third call for public participation. Hearing none, we'll close public participation and move on to item 7 on the revised agenda. Department recommendations. This is for receive and file for purchase and installation of 294 boiler tubes at the county and court building for $52,150. Lynn?
As the chairman indicated, this item involves the replacement of the fire tubes in the boiler. This boiler is located in the county building sub-basement and supplies the heat to the county and court building. During a routine inspection while preparing for the upcoming heating season, they discovered that one of the tubes were leaking. We contacted the service provider, Purvis and Foster. They did a pressure test on the rest of the tubes, and several more tubes started to leak. Also, a fire tube, they're metal tubes inside the boilers, and a hot gas runs through the tubes and it heats the surrounding water, which thus results in steam. Due to the age of the tubes, they're 25 years old. It seemed prudent to us to replace all 294 tubes. We did not want to just replace 8 or 9 of them and then get in the midst of the heating season and lose the boiler. Due to the seasonal high demand for tubes and also potential supply chain issues, we also felt we needed to order the tubes. And so in order to get the installation performed prior to needing the boilers to operate during the heating season. I guess in hindsight, we'll probably start that inspection earlier.
Thank you, Lynn. I neglected to ask for a motion to receive and file this report.
Moved by Kleinfeld.
Supported by Romano.
Thank you. Any discussion on this report? Please vote.
Motion passes 12-0.
Thank you. We'll move on to the next item is a contract with Bernco Incorporated for the 2022 paving and sidewalk replacement project for $339,000. I would like to have a motion to recommend to full board. Thank you. We have a motion in support to move this item to full board. Lynn?
This item is pertaining to the paving and sidewalk replacement project. The purchasing department solicited bids on the Mitten site, and 403 vendors were notified of the solicitation. 26 vendors viewed the documents, and one sealed bid was received and publicly read by purchasing on August 18th. I wanted to note to you that this is actually a rebid. It was initially published July 5th with bids due on July 21st of 2022, and we did not receive any bids. The work involved in this project is at the county and court building, and they would do all work necessary to remove and replace deteriorated concrete slabs, sidewalks. There's some waterproofing as it relates to replacement of slabs that meet the edge of the building, of the county building, and also is removal and replacement of the trench drain, which is on the south side of the court building on the porch. It is original, so it's well overdue for replacement. So we are therefore requesting authorization to execute the contract with Bernco Incorporated in the amount of $339,000. Funding for this project is available in the 2022 Facilities and Operations operating budget.
Thank you. Commissioner Brown?
Thank you. I was just reading a release from SEMCOG. They're releasing some TAP funds for sidewalk replacement. Perhaps we can tap into that ourselves. I sent it out to my communities, but we also had to look at ourselves. Perhaps we can apply for some of that money.
Okay.
Maybe that'll help offset the cost.
Okay, I will certainly, it's TAP funds?
Yeah, I'll send you the document I sent.
That'd be great.
Very
Thank
good.
you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Matusik?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Two questions. We're getting pretty late in the season. Are they going to be
Yes.
able to complete this work?
Because it's concrete work, they can put an additive in the concrete, so they can do that during cold weather. Whereas
Okay.
asphalt, the asphalt plants will close, usually around mid-November.
Okay. My second question is, do you think our lack of bidding was just because these companies are at this moment too busy? Or are we not offering, we're not paying enough? I mean, the fact that this is a fairly large contract for a fairly limited amount of work, and we got no bids and then we got one
Yes.
bid.
Yes, I don't know if you recall at last month's meeting, I had a couple other projects with one bid. And this was a first for me on the first go-around of this project to receive no bids. So it's pretty startling, but asking around, you know, entities are seeing this. Warren Woods, I guess, had a couple of bids that they only had one bid. Clausen had some bids. Same thing. Spoke to construction manager Clark, and in their line of work, soliciting bids, and these are individual bids. These are not general contractor bids, but each trade bid. And they said they are seeing this, and I'm starting to see articles. Of course, I'm looking for these articles of what is happening out there, and it's the volume of work, it's the limited labor force. I think they're taking projects that are either more attractive, maybe they're not enough dollar amount. So a lot of things go into this mix. We don't really think it's going to change quickly, but we will soon be able to see as we do more bidding.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Brown, your name popped up a second time. Okay. Thank you. Seeing no more questions, please vote.
Motion passes 12-0.
Thank you. And with that, that's the end of internal services, and I will pass the gavel to Commissioner Haw and the Government Oversight.
Thank you, Chairman Van Sickle. I hope my meeting can be as expedient as yours. In honoring the request of the petitioner and the time of the appointees for their interviews, without objection, I'd like to move the presentation that we moved to Government Oversight in front of resolutions, so we can go right into appointment interviews unless there's an objection. Seeing none, good. We will go into appointment interviews. The first is Substance Use Disorder Oversight Policy Board. Appointment, 2 vacancies, 3-year terms, October 22nd, 2022 through September 30th, 2025. It is my understanding, well, we need a motion to refer the appointments to full board.
Move it full board, Romano.
Support Van Sickle.
We have a motion by Commissioner Romano, supported by Commissioner Van Sickle. Michael Barrett. Reappointment.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Microphone's yours.
Okay, my name is Michael Barrett, obviously. I have been on a board since 2014, and I've really enjoyed the time there. I feel I have something to offer in that I'm in the substance use field, a specialist in substance abuse. I'm a counselor, case manager at Southwest Counseling Solutions in Detroit. I've been there for over 13 years, and prior to that, I was a funeral director in Southwest Detroit for 10 years, so I see both sides of the coin, really, to be honest with you. And I also have 34 years in recovery myself, so I'm very familiar with what goes on in both sides of the recovery spectrum, and I'm really interested in what goes on in Macomb County. I've learned a lot by sitting in this, on this board. It's been very informative. I particularly like the information about the individual recovery houses and that. There were some times when we went through proposals for funding and that, and why should they be funded and whatnot. Very interesting, because I was in a home like that myself for a long time, and I can reflect on what's needed and what isn't needed. And I really would like to continue on this post. I think I can contribute to it too. That's
Thank you,
basically-
and thank you for the time you've already served. Seeing no speakers, you're good.
Thank you, sir.
Next is Mark Koroi. I thought I saw, yeah, there he is.
Thank you, yes. My name is Mark Koroi. I served previously on a prior incarnation board that was from 2011 to 2014. And what happened is that the Michigan legislature repealed the law that created advisory councils on substance abuse and created a new executive drug policy board. And the people on the old public body were not carried over to the new one. They got all new people in there. And so basically I did work with Randy O'Brien, the MCOSA director at that time, and another member of the board. And we actually drew up the bylaws that this board operates under, the number of people who serve on the board, and the meetings and the schedule and the procedures for that agency were actually co-drafted by me, Michelle, Ms. Stanton, Monique Stanton, and Randy O'Brien. Randy O'Brien retired. His deputy took over. Helen Klingert. She's now the current director of MCOSA. So I do have a background in some of the legal areas dealing with narcotics, drugs, Drug Forfeiture Act, Controlled Substance Act, the Drug Abuse Prevention and Control Act of 1970, which established the DEA's current governance over substance abuse materials, the so-called the divisions of classifications of drugs, and such as marijuana, such as opiates, and serving on the board previously, I believe, was an asset to the board, and being that there's a vacancy now, I just learned it was literally the last day that this vacancy was there, so I shot down here, and that's why I started basically a bare application to be to sit back on the board, since there was an opening and nobody had applied for it except Mr. Barrett and myself, so there's only 2 vacancies. But I joined my 3 or 4 year service. I had the board 3.5 years back in the early part of last decade, and I'd like to serve it on again.
Thank you, Mark.
Okay.
Seeing no speakers, we have a motion support to refer Michael Barrett and Mark Koroi to full board for appointment. Please vote.
Motion passes 12-0.
Thank you. Next item is the presentation, ARPA and Opioid Funds update. Our Deputy County Executive, Vicki, welcome.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Nice to see all of you. Nice to be here. I know you are due for the report. It was timely when Crystal reached out. So thought this would be a good format. Hopefully this works for you as well, and we can talk about doing things in the future. I'll try to be brief but thorough, and then see what questions you have. So when we look at the funds, just to give a few updates on those specifically, or reminders, in dealing with the ARP funds, we have approximately $169 million. Those funds have to be encumbered by the end of 2024 and then actually spent by the end of 2026. We have received both tranche payments in. The second one actually came in just last week. So we have our funding. Relative to staying in the ARP project category, I believe, as you all know, we have an appropriation from the state in their budget for $25 million specific to our Health and Community Services project, and then we still have $25 million pending at the state for our jail project. The opioid funds, again, those will change based on settlements that still are coming in. The largest settlements have already come in, though, and right now we're approximating $1.5 million per year for the next 18 years. We were supposed to have those funds in April, then we were told June and July, and still no date yet on when that money is coming to us. So that's kind of where we stand with those specific funds. Relative, though, to the state money, that's tied to their budget. We haven't seen anything yet on that, any provisions or guidance. Our assumption right now is that will come back to us more than likely, probably as a grant agreement with the state, as a lot of appropriations do. But we should be finding more about that in the coming months. I'm not going to talk too much about guidance. I think we've been through some of that, and we can get into that maybe more specifics later on when we come back to the board or have other meetings, or if you have questions. ARP guidance, though, I think, the biggest thing with that is that it is historic, and it's meant to be one-time type funding just because of the time frame and thus some of the reasoning behind the projects that we're at least looking at. When you look at our projects, again, as a reminder that we've been talking about for the past year and a half with members of the board, we really have the 3 project areas. We have the allocation for public works infrastructure projects at $40 million. We've talked about the jails, the Central Intake and Assessment Center, which is just a portion of the jail. It's the entry point where people first come in. Our most recent estimate back on that is at $117 million. For the Health and Community Services projects that we've talked about, I know a lot of focus is put on the VERC building, which is our central location, but this also involves our sites at the southern end of the county. So we are looking at both of those. So in our minds, that's 2 locations basically at this point. So you have the VERC site. Our focus on the southern end is we have actually 3 facilities in the southern end where we offer the same or similar services at. We're looking at combining those into one site location in the southern end as part of this. I can tell you the VERC estimates, I think we have 6 different estimates we asked for them to prepare for us. Those range anywhere from 60 million to 95 million. 95 million obviously being, would be a total tear down, demolition, new building. And the lower range would be more of just a simpler renovation. For the southeast end of the building, right now where we're at, just because there's a lot of moving pieces that I'll talk about later, the one estimate that we have would be basically to find an existing building that is available in the southern end and have to basically rehab that whole building. So that cost right now is at 21 million. So if you look at that for the ARP projects, those projections total $253 million already. And right now we have 194 million roughly that we have committed to us. And again, that 25 million that's pending from the state is very crucial to the planning. So obviously any shortfalls, depending on where we end up, would need to come from other sources, more than likely fund balance, county general funds, at least where we're at right now. When you look at Public Works, I think is fairly simple in some regards. So a lot of my comments today are really going to be about the jail and the health and community services that I alluded to in my email, just about some of the synergies and things that we're learning. The opioid guidance, just a few things I want to point out there. One is that money has to be used for people who have an opioid use. It's not just a substance use. It's not just any type of drug. So you have to have that as a basis, but then those people can have other substance use disorders, and then obviously the much larger tie-in with mental health disorders. Also, when you're looking at those funds, any funding that you use for programs, all that funding that we're looking at really is for programs and services. But you have to have evidence-based or evidence-informed programs and the utilization of licensed and accredited practitioners and programs. So those are just 2 things to point out in that, along with some other provisions that, again, we can talk about later. When we look at the opioid projects, we have total of 12 projects, if you will, on that list. One of those is the jail piece. So that starts to pull in some of that synergy, right? When we talk about the central intake and assessment, it's having the people brought in and then trying to assess them for where they belong in the jail and where they're going to end up per se. And a lot of that has to do with not only the medical beds for physical ailments, but also having the right beds for their mental health issues and then their substance use issues. So that's where you start to see pulling in those types of overlap. And I can get into more details on those projects. I won't at this time. A lot of them are treatment and recovery based, diversion based, those types of arenas. When we look at the ARP funds and the facilities, we're not just talking about the buildings. We know those buildings need to be changed for a variety of reasons. Some of those can be the simple cosmetics. They're older buildings, but really what drives the facilities and what we're planning all goes back to the services and programs. So we talk to the departments, what are you running out of those facilities now? What could you run out of there that maybe you can't? What are some of the limitations? because of the way that you're set up, or maybe you don't have a certain department or certain partner within the building. So that's what we focused on. And again, it's all still being driven by the services that we offer and provide in the county. And really what we end up creating is really that transformational change. I know they use that a lot with the ARP. I'm not a huge fan of the word. I haven't come up with a better one, but it really is systemic change in our programs and the way that we look at these services that we offer and the people that we serve. When you take a look at the involvement in this has kind of been what is led because of so many partners being involved and trying to make sure, again, especially with the one-time funding, that we kind of get this right, at least the big picture from the get-go, before we start maybe picking off one individual project to go after. So it's taken a longer time, but I have to say it's very excited. I was excited to come here today and talk about it. When you look at some of those overlap, the jail, the opioid, and the health and community services, mental health, substance abuse, wraparound services. One thing we've talked about before, when we get to those wraparound services, just so you know what I mean by that, or they even refer to it as warm handoffs as we do, but in some of the planning documents, that really is our health department, our community action, our senior services. So we may have people entering the jail that need the mental health or the substance abuse treatment there, but there's a great question, okay, what if they're the breadwinner in their family? Do we have services and connections that we're making sure that the people in their household can continue to be stable? Again, it's about breaking those cycles and not taking that person. The diversion programs that we talk about within some of these projects, it's the same issue. If we have to incarcerate people, we certainly know that is needed in cases. But if we're going to do that, we want to make sure, one, we have the appropriate services within the county jail and our programs that we're giving to those people. And then also the same thing on the outside. As good as some of our county services are on the wraparound services, we have silos within our departments. We don't have one central intake system, if you will. The jail has one, community action, senior services, health department. There's no connectivity within those. So that's something we're looking to improve. That's actually a side project through IT that was started even before all of this. But if we could have an intake system like that can help connect some of those services and those people to those programs that we have and make that much more efficient. When you look at other things that we're lacking in these arenas and what we're trying to potentially fix the gaps with, I talked about having the right beds within the jail. There is no treatment center within the county for mental health or substance abuse, whether it's for us or the privates. Happening all over in the state. It's not unusual to us, happening all over the country. But it's becoming more prominent and it's becoming more of an issue for county providers. When you talk to community mental health, substance use disorder committees here, they're a big part of our plans, as is CMH that we've done. You talk to the hospitals are now becoming overloaded. And not necessarily the most appropriate place for people to show up is at the ERs. So these issues are starting to and have been compounding themselves. A terminology I'll reference today, you might already have heard, along with that treatment center, is even a crisis stabilization center. So treatment, you're kind of looking long-term, maybe being placed in that either through the jail or maybe another provider. Crisis stabilization, more for walk-ins and that ER. That does not exist within the county today. I've talked about the warm handoff and the coordination. We also lack the right services in the right locations. Many of our departments, especially when you look at the southern end, people were placed there because there was space, not necessarily because that was the best place for those individuals to be or to offer that service. and that program. Also, when I talk about some of the internal, appropriate setups within the facilities, I think in the jail you can understand that, not having the right beds. If you're all familiar with the jail, obviously, maybe in some of our areas not so much, but just some examples that we're looking at and considering with our buildings. Take our seniors, for example. We have the wonderful adult daycare center. One of its kind in the county, one of the only drop-in centers that I believe we're all very proud of. Aside again for maybe cosmetics that would be helpful, they have no secure outdoor area to have those individuals at. So very common when you're running adult day centers for dementia that they have a secure enclosed interior area to make sure, though, that they can get them outside. So that's something that we're looking at and making an improvement on. Within the VERC as well, and CMH is both at the VERC, that is our entire children's services program. Within the county through community mental health is located at the VERC, and we have adult services at our Southeast Health Center location. Both of those could have much better consultation rooms, therapy type rooms for the individuals. And if you look at some of the education programs, we offer a lot of education programs, whether it's through MSUE that's there, Senior Services, MCA, Michigan Works. Again, connectivity there with people and getting them jobs. There's different classrooms that we could have that would be more conducive to that and offering those programs on site. Then maybe we don't have to go off site. Maybe we don't have to pay for locations elsewhere, that we have those locations. Something that we've talked about is even kitchen facilities within the VERC, and having that, again, that goes back to that education. That is really twofold, but one is that education piece. And again, that leads to, if you can educate people on healthy food choices and how to cook for themselves, they become more stable within the community. That also helps on the public health side and the services that we provide. Again, if we can get that information out there and have public health right there at the same time that maybe MSUE is doing a health program, they're there together presenting this information. Also with our seniors program, they've looked at that and having production kitchens and bringing the production of our food inside rather than having that being outsourced to providers. So those are the types of considerations that we have and the services that we're looking at providing that are really all interwoven within these projects. And again, it's not just about, the facility, it's going back to those services and what are we creating outside of those. So when we do talk a little bit more about our facilities, and again, I'm focusing again because there's overlap. We want to correct some of our facility issues, which again are underutilization of buildings that we do have, right location, right size for the services being provided, and then the lease sites that we have. I know there's one area that I think the board is familiar with that we are now considering and have been. It's been talked about or asked about. We have a site, we have a juvenile justice center that was built in the early 2000s. I was just starting here, so I don't have a whole lot of history on that. I know a few people do. But that was sized for 140 beds with a couple of gyms, a nice cafeteria, a nice kitchen, wonderful facility and layout. Our average of kids, again, because of trends within the community that started years ago, but now even more so with criminal justice reform, we average probably 40 kids within there at any given time. So a very underutilized building. Because of the services that are in there with youth, there are very strict guidelines for who else you can put in that building. There are sight and sound restrictions. So we've tried to look at what are other types of partners we could bring in there, other renovations that you can do. It makes it very difficult to find those partners. So one of the things we've been discussing is having the youth home, I go back to the old term, but having the youth home maybe become a treatment center for mental health and substance abuse. Maybe that becomes a crisis stabilization center. Have to find another facility or build another facility for the JJC. But we would right-size that facility for what we need within there. I can tell you within there that's where a lot of conversations have been had. We have interested parties, that's part of the discussions. A lot of this and that outreach part of it is being led by community mental health and community corrections. We've had interest from the state, we've had interest from private partners, we have nonprofits that are interested, we have hospitals that are interested in partnering with us and looking at that. I know CMH is interested in it. They believe it's a good site and that it has a lot to offer. I can also tell you, again, all of this coordination that happens within the JJC. In the past year, we have the detention side of the youth home and then a treatment side of the youth home. We had to stop our treatment side of the youth home earlier this year, unfortunately, for a lot of reasons, but some of that, like we're seeing everywhere, one of that has to do with staffing issues and trying to find people, professionals, therapists to fill those spots. But again, because of the numbers of the youth being there and targeted for treatment programs in a facility, they're looking at many services outside of that they can do from home. It's just low numbers. So then even if you do get the youth in there, it might be only one or two, you have the personnel costs. There's a potential within this program if we were to put some sort of mental health facility at the JJC now, build a new site for the JJC, that could become our treatment center for those youth that are detained in the JJC, and we can gain some synergies from that. Again, there's a lot of wraparound services in that area, a lot of the mental health. Again, you bring public health, just the way that whole area of our county is set up, and you'd have a treatment center that people from the jail could go right to that treatment center. It's on the same campus and be treated there. It's a place for people from the public to become needed, to go to if they need those services. When we talk about diversion programs, and I know it's Mr. Broussard's here from the prosecutor's office, and we talk about those programs, diversion, there's many programs out there, that I know they've looked at. We have meetings with them coming up in the next week, before they even get into the system. And having police officers maybe be able to drop those people off if we have a walk-in site. And rather than having them come into the system, maybe it's more appropriate to get them in that type of program first, and not add to the issues that they already have. The one thing that obviously we have with specifically the ARP funding is we have that one-time funding, large sum of money. The partners that we're working with have the program dollars and the service dollars. They don't have the infrastructure dollars. So those are the discussions or how all of that has started to come together with those different entities, and where maybe we can put our best dollars forward and our best investment, maybe more so on the infrastructure side, which we know improves their services. If they're able to come to the table with some financing and dollars on the program and service side, it becomes a wonderful match. There are many models out there, and we have the models ourselves, especially when you look at the services that we provide at the VERC. It's even with mental health, though, where you bring in the private partners that are there with you. Mental health, I think they opened their new facility. I think they have a pharmacy right next door that they brought in. That way those people that they're servicing, if they need the services of a pharmacy, can go right there. At our own health center, the Majestic on Van Dyke, our health department's there, partnered with MyCare dental program to offer a dental program. So again, those are the partnerships that we're looking at to make these changes. I can tell you, again, I mentioned, outside partners, county department-wise, again, community mental health, community corrections, obviously the sheriff's office had recent discussions with the court. We're now moving on to the prosecutor's office and having their discussions with them on how they can fit into these strategies. Also, obviously, health department, everyone at the VERC has been a part of those discussions. The state, I think we've had 6 different tours over at the JJC for partners. I can tell you statewide, one of the reasons they're interested, again, is the facility and the buildings are lacking, and one of their biggest needs is children's services. The state doesn't even have facilities that they can offer. And they heard about what we're trying to do here, and they're very, very interested in this piece of it as well, and looking at that. With that, I will be quiet now, and I'm sure there's pieces I left out. I tried not to, but if you have any questions, that's why I'm here.
Thank you, Vicki. That's a lot of moving parts, and yes, there is questions. Commissioner Zung.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you so much, Vicki, for being here today and giving us that thorough explanation of what you guys have been working on the past few months. I really do appreciate it. You talked a lot about infrastructure and facility improvements, and with these 3 big projects, there's a shortage of $31 million combined from the numbers that you mentioned. So I'm just concerned if we are, in over our heads with this one-time money in trying to, make the best improvements that we can to make, our county as best as it can. But when I go back to like the core, or what I believe the core purpose of the ARPA funds was to really address the negative impacts of COVID, and also to service disproportionately impacted communities. I'm having a hard time making that connection with these 3 projects. For me, negative economic impact means supporting our small businesses and focusing on workforce development. A lot of the stuff that you mentioned, improvements to the jail and intake, are, treatment, but not necessarily preventive measures to address why these families are continually, stuck in this system. And so I think that this money is a significant amount of money. When you break it down in those projects, it comes short. But I feel that there could be other projects that could be taken into consideration that would have that transformative impact that you mentioned. And I can tell from your presentation how excited you guys are in addressing all of the issues. I just don't know, and I don't want to try to minimize the issue of mental health or substance abuse at all. But I want to go back to the core reason why we have these ARPA funds, and it's really to address the impact that we've had because of COVID. And I just don't know if these projects fully address that.
Sure. Yeah, I can speak a little bit to that. And yes, when you look at the guidelines, I think all of us could come up with different projects and never have enough money, to do what we wanted to do. And I look at it too that the people that will benefit eventually from these programs tie into to some of what you're saying. I'm not sure to the same extent. We can have a conversation offline, of course, always willing to do that. But these people are, when you look at that and you look at the people who suffered from COVID, it does go back to those with mental health issues and those with substance use issue. It goes back to when you look at the guidance, it talks about people in congregate care facilities, one of those being a jail, and that type of population. And I think too, when you go into the bigger socioeconomic arena, of which I think is somewhat of where you're going, and those, impacted by COVID. Sometimes it's those individuals who come into contact with law enforcement, the criminal justice system, end up having substance abuse issues. And so I think, like I said, while it is facilities, it's also the other programs. And I think if we have the right facilities to run programs and better programs and more efficient, will make some of the improvements that I think you're thinking of without having a detailed conversation. So that's the best I can answer it right now. But yes, I understand. Yes, you can look at that, and you've read the guidance. There's probably over 1,000 different line items where you could fit projects into. So yeah.
Thank you. Commissioner Zinner.
Thank you, Chair. You have a lot going on, Vicki, as usual. I have two questions for you. With all that you described through this opioid treatment, since we're hearing so much about it on the news and people in all kinds of areas, there's an area that you didn't mention, and maybe I missed it. Is there an area where there's going to be a physical factor in the community? Is it going to be a group addressing, stopping the drugs from coming to the kids? I was in a town once visiting, and I was talking to one of the, I think it was a county officer, I don't remember who, and he said, well, 30 feet away from us was a road. He said it was a dirt road then. He said people were getting drugs from this person or whoever would be there 24 hours a day if they wanted to stand there. And they realized they were losing the town, and businesses were shutting down. They said, do we want our family to still be here, our grandchildren? Because everybody was leaving. And they said, yes, we want our families here, we want to keep it here. And they just took it back. They, anything that had to do with drugs, anything at all, they had the judges with them, they had everything coordinated. And it was a totally different place. And I could see the new buildings, businesses, I could see the old areas. And he explained to me what had happened. And I said, that was just 5 years ago then at that time. And I said, well, that's good to know. And he said, we just kept it up. He said, they sell drugs anywhere, but they just didn't want to do it there. So is there a plan to physically intercede to stop the drug situation for our teens or anyone here in Macomb County?
When you look at, to me, yes, there's prevention programs. So yes, that is a piece of what we look at in the opioid programs. And again, if you go to those wraparound services and getting to people who could be influenced into using the drugs. The other side that you look at is the criminal justice system and working it with law enforcement. And yes, all of that would be part of the plan and discussion, but may not necessarily be funded through the programs that we're talking about. But yes, that's what we're looking at, is making sure now when we sit down that we kind of go from point A all the way to point Z, or at least what we can identify, and having all of the right people in the room. And those are some of the discussions that we still need to have, and why it's been taking a little longer, because you go down one road and you're thinking going in one piece, and then all of a sudden something else. It's like, oh, we better investigate that before we do that. And that's why too we haven't met with some people yet. I know the prosecutor's office has been asking to meet with. We just weren't there yet, but now we're there now we're there to start meeting with them and saying, okay, what's your piece of this? And then, seeing to what are we missing? Is there anything, at least that we know of at this point, that we think we could legitimately add to that? Do I think it'd ever be 100%? No.
No, we can't do 100%. I'd just like to see it physically. I remember when I was in high school, of course that was a long time ago, but the principal and whoever was with him came down, and we were all in the hall, and they started going through a few lockers. It was intimidating. I'd like to see that happen. I'd like to see them just drop into a school, whatever group is designed, go through bags, go through that, go through cars, clean it up. Just do everything we can to save our children.
Right.
That's real, I think, intervention. Because if they think you're coming, if they don't know if you're coming, then it should do something, is what I'm saying. Thank you for explaining that. Also, in regard to the services for when someone is incarcerated and they're the breadwinner, at this time, what is in place for the rest of the family? Is there something in place, or are there, if they ask for help, or is help suggested?
It's minimal, I can tell you that, and I know that's one of the things that's come out of our surveys with that is, yes, they have certain services for that and certain referrals, but we could make a lot of improvements there. And connect especially county departments that offer some of those services that are often overlooked or missed, that people don't even know, even within the county, that we offer those services.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Thank you, Chair.
You're welcome.
Thank you, and Commissioner Zinner, I would ask that part of that question you present to the sheriff when we go through his budget as well. Next is Commissioner Kraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Vicki, thank you for the update and the report. I've had Dave Pankatide chirping in my ear a little bit, giving me some side updates from the CMH side, so I appreciate both of your efforts here. And you know, as you know, the central intake idea has been bubbling up for years and years since I've been here, and it's great to see it on paper. It's almost maybe coming to fruition, and I'm cautiously optimistic. I was in the beginning, and now just hearing, you know, one of my hangups was silos, like you mentioned. Government's really good at working in silos, but as Dave has told me, and as you've said, I mean, you're taking every department head, the people that work on the ground, and saying, hey, this is our thoughts. What do you think? Community action, community corrections, the sheriff, CMH, substance use. I mean, you're pulling everybody in, and it's great to see. And I really appreciate that, because that's the only way we're going to get this done, and we're going to get it done correctly. Another hang up is staff. As you know, and as we know on the CMH side of things, it's tough to find people. We can build these facilities, but getting the people there to help with treatment is another major issue. But the fact that we don't even have facilities that can help these folks is step one. We've talked about crisis stabilization at CMH. We've talked about treatment, because our folks are staying in the hospitals. They're staying in the ERs for weeks, for months at a time. And that's not where these folks should be. They should be in the proper environment to get the proper care. And if we're a few staff short, but they're in the proper place, I'm all for that. So I commend you and the exec's office and everybody else that's working on this project. If there's any, thing that the CMH board can be of help with, we're happy to be here, but you've tapped all the right resources, and I thank you for that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dave and Helen have been great as part of this process, so it's been good. Yep.
Commissioner Matuzak.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Vicki. Since our original discussions about this, I don't know, year and a half ago, whatever, I spend a lot of time out talking to senior groups in congregate care, in assisted living, in senior housing, just in the public. And I've been actually running these two ideas, not so much infrastructure, everybody knows about infrastructure, but the other two ideas past these groups of seniors. And I have to tell you, there is broad support for getting people treatment instead of throwing them in a jail cell. There is broad support for, I refer to it as one-stop shopping, because I hand out a sheet with all the 15 phone numbers for all the services in the county, and people are like, well, who do I call for this, and who do I call for that? Simplifying our intake, I think it's really critical that our residents get better services, our taxpayers get better bang for their buck, if you will. I think it's really, really important that we right size. I think it's really important that we get out of one location into a southern location. I would also argue we probably need a northern location, at least a little bit. So I'm excited about the prospect of right sizing, of really focusing on programming stuff. The public-private partnerships are really exciting. That is how we build business out in the community. I think that that's really critical. So I'm quite pleased with the whole process. My only concern, my only wish, if you will, is that when we look at senior services and health services, that we remember that Martha Teaberry is a part of that service range, and that they be incorporated into this service package as well. Martha Teaberry provides a very specific service for people who have no place else to go. And I know that some people don't want it to be a county service at all, but the fact is we have this weird relationship with them. And if I'm looking at senior services and health department services and mental health services, Martha Teaberry is part of that continuum. So I hope that we figure out a way to keep them viable.
Okay, we can take a look at that, and we've had some discussions with them, so, yep.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner. Chair Brown.
Thank you. Thank you, Vicki, for coming out and giving a detailed presentation. I know your team's been hard at work, and it's evident, but you just scratched the surface of all the things you've been doing behind the scenes to prepare. This county's got an opportunity to be revolutionary among the whole country in terms of the diversion center we're going to do at the jail. So much concern about violence on the streets, mental health being being a common denominator with all of it, and the drug addiction and all the rest that goes with it, that destroy families, make our families unstable, toss them into turmoil and economic turmoil as well, that just create a cascading effect throughout our whole county. Doing what we're about to do with this jail diversion center and the wraparound services is what people have been looking for decades, quite frankly. We're on the cusp of doing something about it and using our existing investments in this county, like the JJC, put that building back to proper use. As you said, times changed and that became out of focus. But we're going to use it again for something so much better. And it's going to not only strengthen the families, because the people that get in trouble with the law, the day they get in trouble with the law, can get assessed and get the treatment they need, instead of putting them in a jail cell, making more hardened criminals, and really doing nothing to help their physical conditions. At the same time, it helps the family get them back together and stable and make them more productive unit. Keeps our houses safe. Crime will be hopefully decreased over time, because we're taking people that may go back on the street and commit more criminal acts to feed the addictions or whatever else is going on in their head. We'll make our streets safer. There's many things that we could do in society to make it better. There's many problems out there. But this, I think, is the one investment this county can make that'll have lasting value, to hit the biggest bang for the buck. There are many things to be done, and we'll get to those as soon as we can. But we can't do everything. But we can get a good start by attacking it in this way. And we've talked about it, Commissioner Kraft mentioned, we've heard this a long time, and it may soon be coming. And what a good thing that'll be. And we still got a lot of details to work out, and there'll be traps along the way. But the goal is to intercept them early on, give them the treatment they need, and do all the things I just got done talking about. So I'm so happy about it. I'm really looking forward to it. And carry on. And we're looking forward to, as this thing rolls out, and we'll get through those other steps. But thank you and your team, and I certainly have my full support on this. And we'll go forward. So thank you so much, and take care. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Seeing no other speakers, I need a, what? I don't have you, but go ahead.
So I don't want to ask you like what would possibly be on the chopping block, but I am curious about the 25 million, because we're getting awful late in the year. And I don't think all the folks in Lansing are meeting too often right now. So I'm, once we get to a certain point, then nothing takes place this year, and you got to start all over next year. You know how that works. So if that weren't to materialize, is the jail project's still one of the major priorities regardless of whether or not that money comes in, or is it contingent upon it? Or have those decisions not been made?
I would say that's number one.
Okay.
On the list because of where we're at with that in the jail in and of itself. As we all know where the jail is at. And we had, what was it, 3 years ago, $300 million to replace the whole jail. And coming up with those dollars and that, this is just a portion of the jail. So I would think the way we've talked about it, the investment in the building and the functionality and then going to the services, all tied to that. And again, for that piece with COVID was really exacerbated within the jail and having COVID patients in there and not the right medical facility for them. So no, that would be at the top of our list still. And in some models of how we've done funding, that would be fully funded from the ARP would be our recommendation.
Okay. All right, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Seeing no other speakers again, can I have a motion to receive and file?
Great.
Thank you. We have a motion by Commissioner Wallace, supported by Commissioner Zenner. Any discussion on the motion? If not, please vote.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vicki. That was quite a number of different topics there.
Motion passes 12-0.
Thank you. Next item on the agenda is resolutions. Item 10A, 2022-8849, a resolution to support Senate Bill 117 and House Bill 4902. I need a motion to refer to full board.
So moved.
That was Commissioner Van Sickle, supported by Commissioner Wallace. Thank you. This is a resolution that supports Michigan-based businesses. It's my understanding Wayne and Oakland County have already adopted this and forwarded on to our leaders and legislators in Lansing. I know this is something that we had talked about not engaging in, but since they had already done it, I just felt it was critical that we be part of the united group passing that message on to our board. So with that, let me see. I have a speaker. Commissioner's up.
Thank you, Chair. I do support these bills because I think it's important to support Michigan-based businesses. I just have a question about our own contracting and bidding ordinance and if it is something that we as a county can adopt for ourselves, because we're supporting this, but this would only apply to bids for the state and not necessarily Macomb County contracts. So I think it's a great idea and I support the concept, but I think that we could do more as a board for our own contracting and bidding ordinance.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing that question forward. I think that's an excellent question, and it will be asked. Commissioner Zinner. Commissioner Farrington.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, same things I've discussed before, but a couple of other items. I don't see how this ties into county business. I did read through it all. It's interesting. The Senate bill was submitted in February of 2021. The House bill in May of the same year. They were sent to government ops in their respective houses, which basically is where bills go to die. And in fact, Senate Majority Leader Shirkey is the chair of that committee and hasn't even brought it forth. So the fact that two Democratic-run counties opted to push a Senate Minority Leader bill, I don't think is a reason that we should. So just wanted to give some background to people. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Zinner.
Well, I I have to agree with Commissioner Farrington. Just because the two did, I don't think that necessarily affects us. I mean, we like to coordinate, but are there any repercussions? I mean, how long ago had they done that? I don't really yet.
They have done it within the last 6 months, and the purpose of putting this bill in front of the commissioners was not solely because Wayne and Oakland County did it. It's because I think it's a great idea.
I'm just going by what you said, Dar. But I understand. I understand you think it's a good idea. I mean, I knew that because that's why you did it. But with that information also, that really makes it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Kraft.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think my question is super technical because at the county we receive sealed bids and then the bids are opened and the public can come in and see the bids. So would these companies know what the lowest bidder amount was and then they could just jump in and undercut because they know what the dollar amount is and then could come in $10 less and win the job, even if their initial bid was $100,000 more than the lowest bid? I don't know how they do that process at the state. So I guess it just seems like a good way to undercut folks, but just a technical question.
I believe we've got the Director of Purchasing coming Monday to talk about bypass on some police vehicles. We'll ask him that question. Thank you. Commissioner Kleinfeld.
Originally, when I was reading it, I had that same thought, but then as you further read, and states that border us are enacting these laws which affect our businesses negatively, why would we welcome theirs to come in and have a different set of rules? So I'm going to support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner, second round, Farrington.
Thank you. Just to clarify, Commissioner Kraft's, as of a few years ago, that's exactly how it's done, because I've bid on it before. They're all open, so they have the ability to go right in and undercut. So, just clarification.
Thank you. Commissioner Song, that second round.
Commissioner Kleinfeld, I'm a Buckeye. You probably didn't know that. I
hold
caught
that
that as
against
well. I caught that as well, and I immediately thought that this bill was introduced as sort of a, being petty towards Ohio for doing that. I'm going to support this resolution because I understand, Chair, that you support Michigan-based small businesses and the concept. But I'm just going to reiterate again that and maybe to echo what Commissioner Farrington said is how does this affect us at the county? And I think that we could actually look at our own ordinance and enact something like that. I think that would have more of a bigger impact than us just, signing on to a resolution that the other two counties have. But I'm going to support it because I don't have any conflicts about it. I just think we could do more. Thank you.
Thank you. Chair Brown.
Thank you. This basically says that the board wants to support Michigan-based businesses. Then it goes up to Lansing and it goes through the meat grinder, but what comes out we're not sure. But I think supporting this, I support the resolution because it supports Michigan-based businesses, and in the end, I mean, this is not the legislation is going to pass Lansing. As Commissioner Farrington said, it'll never see the light of day anyway. But so we don't spend too much time dividing it up. But this county has policies in place that given a certain advantage to Macomb-based businesses. This is an attempt to do something like that at the state of Michigan. What it will be or ever happens to be, I don't know, but we're just trying to support the home team, and I support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Zinner.
Thank you, Chair. Do you think that when we need bids from out of state, this will be a hampering to them? I mean, sometimes there's things that you need from out of state. Certain we get them here at different times.
Well, there's a reason that our surrounding out-of-state individuals and legislatures are passing this same type of motion. That's because they're looking at Michigan businesses as taking business away from them. I can give you, after our meeting, a perfect example of how Ohio opposed a bill I introduced because we were taking business away from them. And Michigan was not receiving the tax revenue, which is currently in excess of $50 million over the last 10 years. So it goes both ways. I'll explain to you what that was after the meeting. There's a few in here that know. Seeing no other speakers, please vote.
Motion passes 11-1 with Commissioner Farrington voting no.
Thank you. I don't know why this screen goes dark, but okay. Next item on the agenda, item 11, a proclamation recognizing and celebrating Len Arnett Bricks. Is that how you say that, Len? Brink. I was close. For 50 years of service, she started when she was 2, with Macomb County to be presented at a full board meeting by Chairman Brown. Motion to refer to full board.
Support Van Sickle.
We have a motion by Commissioner Romano, supported by Commissioner Van Sickle. Thanks, Luke. Any discussion? Please vote.
I got a discussion.
Well, can't you see he's fixing my machine over there?
Thank you. I just wanted to know, were they hiring when you were 11 years old? I don't understand this with 50 years of service. They must have been hiring at 11 years old. That's all I have, Chair. Thank you.
See, that's why I didn't see his name there.
That's why you didn't.
We
We'll
have
have the
motion
roast at full
support,
board.
please. Oh, Commissioner Saw.
Well, while Lynn is here, I also want to thank Lynn for her 50 years of service and dedication to Macomb County and our residents. And she started off making $2.48. So that's how long it was. So thank you, Lynn. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Seeing no other speakers again, please vote.
Motion passes 12-0.
Thank you. Next item is a proclamation honoring and congratulating Brooke Richards for receiving the 2022 Michigan 4-H State Award in Gardening and Horticulture Junior Division. Chair Brown. Motion to refer to full board.
So moved.
Van Sickle
I
support.
have a motion by Chair Brown, supported by Commissioner Van Sickle. Seeing no speakers, please vote. I still have a saved yes from the last time.
Motion passes 12-0.
Thank you. Next item is public participation. This is an opportunity for anyone from the public who wishes to speak on any issue for a maximum of 3 minutes. I will recognize anybody other than my good friend, Pat Daniels. Welcome.
And to you, sir. And I'm sorry that you're from Ohio.
I knew that somebody was going to say it. Go
Somebody
ahead, my
has to
friend.
be.
It's all yours.
Good afternoon. Most of you know who I am. I'm the chairman of Veteran Services for the county, for the committee. And I live in Clinton Township, Dale Allen Street. And have been on the Veterans Commission for 20 years or longer. Been the chairman for probably 12 or 16. It all runs together after a while. But I wanted to come today because I wanted you to hear it from me and not the rumor mill. We know how the county things start, somebody starts it. And we didn't make it up to the top of the elevator on the 9th floor and somebody said, oh yeah, we're here to tell you this. And it wasn't me who was telling the story. Just anyway, I wanted to come today to tell you that effective November 1st, I'll be stepping down from the Veteran Service Commission and stepping down as the chairman. I've spent 50 years or better in the county helping veterans, and my health is getting worse all the time. Last February, I went to Florida, found a house. I'm going to become a snowbird for a while. Not fair to the veterans of the county or fair to the commission that I'm not here 6 months out of the year. Of course, all of the other people on the commission said, well, you can call in. When we had a meeting, it's just call. That's not fair to them or fair to the county. It was either buy the house in Florida or run for the county commission. So I chose the house in Florida. Go to Florida. But it's been my honor, my pleasure to serve the veterans of this county, and I can leave here knowing that the services they get today compared to what we had 20 years ago are beyond what we imagined 20 years ago we could do. With your help, with the millage, and you guys supporting us, the veterans in this county, the services are there. We can't make them go there to get them, but if they show up, we're going to do everything we know how to do to make sure they get what they got coming. And that's changed. You've allowed us to, through the millage and stuff, to hire more more service officers. We put some other people in place. And probably the smartest thing I did as the chairman was get everybody to vote yes to hire Laura. If we lose her, we've lost something. And your support for her has been terrific. To you guys that have been around forever, my friends, you know how I feel about you guys. And to the new commissioners, thank you for getting on board and continue to support our veterans in Macomb County. I've said before here, and I want to say it again before I leave, the only thing we owe to veterans in this county, the only thing we owe them is everything. And I would hope you'd keep that in mind down the road when something comes up for veteran service and you have to vote on doing whatever's got to be done. The only thing we owe them is everything. It's been my pleasure and my honor. I'm not going away. Nothing says I couldn't sell that house in Florida and come back and run for commissioner anyway. So, thank you so much for all you've done. It's been my pleasure and my mission in life, and I'll get up November 2nd in Florida and go look for a veteran I can help, because that's what I do. So, thank you.
Anyone else? Oh, look who's coming up to speak now.
Hello, yeah, I
Pat.
sort of spilled the beans a little early. My name's Mike Salyers. I live on La Cavera Drive in Sterling Heights. One of the things that were our intentions here was we have one resignation from Terry Weston and now Pat, and we were hoping you guys would look at getting us two at the same time. So we're looking for two commissioners. Pat's leaving November 1st. So that's when we need them, and we're just giving you a heads up. Start asking people in your districts if they want to help us out, because we do have the best commission in the state, and you guys already know that. So thanks for your help, And you guys have a great day. Let's go.
Thank you.
I'm missing a doctor's appointment, right now, so we gotta go.
Talk to you. Anyone else from the public? Well, hello, Lynn.
I have to say that this, that this resolution is totally unexpected, and I appreciate the thoughtfulness of this board. It's hard for me to believe it's been 50 years. I have to say I've enjoyed all 50 years, but don't get me wrong, there's been moments. But it's been a pleasure working with the boards over the years, and I certainly appreciate all the support that this board has given me. Thank you.
Len, we do expect you to come back to the full board meeting so we have an opportunity to talk about 50 years.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, anyone else from the public wish to be heard? Seeing none, next is commissioners' comments. And this thing is not clicking over. So, any commissioner wish to speak? Commissioner Matuzak. Holy cow. Commissioner Matuzak.
Vicki, could you just hang on a moment? I just want to clarify what I talked about at the last meeting under commissioner comments in terms of the big water main break. I don't really care about the water main break or the pipe or any of that. Pipes break, things happen. What I care about is that I, again, met with 15 senior citizens the following week, and when I asked who was notified about the bad water situation, only 3 people raised their hands, and it's because their sons and daughters called them. If this had been an instance of sabotage or poisoning of the water system or whatever, these 15 seniors were out. I believe that the county, that's why I wanted Vicki to stay, that we have an emergency management department. I believe we have an emergency management communication plan, no doubt in a 3-ring binder, sitting on a shelf. I would like a very clear explanation, because I know what happens when things like Great Lakes Water or we cross jurisdictional lines. Communication tends to get a little messy. I would just like to hear from emergency management the matrix about communication. How are we getting the word out about things, and in what methods, and what are we doing to make sure citizens sign up for emergency communications? And my second example of this is the big storm that just came through and left hundreds of thousands of people without power. I discover on the sheriff's Facebook page that our 911 system isn't working. I remember we allocated a ton of money for redundancy and backup systems to 911. I would like to know what happened during that, when the only notification I got was by looking at a Facebook page. So I really would like to hear, whether it's from the sheriff or emergency management, how communication flows, what methods they use in case of emergencies, and how that information, those methods are promoted among our constituents. Because I really think we've dodged a couple of bullets, and if that truly had been a water issue where someone was sabotaging the water system, people would have died because they didn't know. And I just would like, I'm not criticizing what happened, I just want to know what the information flow is. And like I said, I'm sure we have an emergency management communication plan. I'm sure it's in a notebook on a shelf. I would just like to review it. Because I know when I worked for Congressman David Bonnier, when the Canadian side of the river had a chemical spill, they didn't tell anybody. And it was practically a State Department treaty we had to negotiate with the Canadians, so they would actually tell the Coast Guard that they had a chemical spill. And so I know what happens with cross-border, whether it's a county border or other border, that sometimes communication just gets screwed up. So I would just like someone to review our plan and report back to us. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I will ask staff to draft an agenda item for our next government ops meeting so that we have that on there. But I can tell you when that gust storm took place on that Monday, we were on the golf course together. Vicki just happened to be riding with our emergency manager. As we tried to get off the course, there were limbs bouncing off the top of the golf cart. They got back, they jumped into their vehicles, took off because they were made aware Comet, wasn't Comet, it was Comtech, had gone down, and were driving quickly to Warren to find out what could take place. So I think that's a great agenda item. It was probably one of the scariest moments that I've been in a very, very long time. So we will do that. I will ask staff to draft it as an agenda item. So thank you. Commissioner Farrington. See, I don't ignore you.
Thank you, Chair. I wanted to apologize to Pat for getting up in the middle of the talk. What he's done for the community has been phenomenal. The ironic thing is the call I had to take was my son finally calling me, and after 6 years in the Navy, he's coming home tomorrow. So,
Yay. God bless.
Proud Papa is ready to pick him up at the airport. Thank you.
Good for you. Proud dad. Commissioner Kleinfeld.
My little withdraw button isn't showing. I was going to withdraw. Thank you.
I think some people do this to drive the chairs crazy. I really do. Commissioners.
I drive you the craziest, I know. Not on purpose, though. So prior to being a Buckeye, as most of you know, I was born in a refugee camp. And on August 25th, 2 weeks ago, I was invited to Advocacy Day that was organized by the Southeast Michigan Refugee Collaborative. And so I've asked staff to put the handout that I received from there. Hopefully you guys will take a few minutes to take a look at it. But it talks a little bit about, you know, what we as a government can do to welcome and support refugees. There were reps at the event from Oakland County as well as Wayne County, and different agencies and nonprofits that support refugees and new Americans. And I think that in the future, if they ever, you know, do any more events or work groups, I would love to have you guys there as well to learn a little bit more about the influx of refugees that are coming to Southeast Michigan and how we can support them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Look forward to that. Seeing no further speakers, next item on the agenda.
Motion to adjourn, go into closed session.
I have to read why we're going into closed session. Closed session to discuss confidential memos dated August 30th, 2022, September 6th, 2022, with Corp Counsel John Shapka. I have a motion to go into closed session. Do I have a second?
Support Kleinfeld.
A motion by Commissioner Kleinfeld. Please vote.
The motion passes 12-0.